Hello, welcome back to my studio. Well, now the World Illustration Awards has finally closed its doors for entry this year, I thought I'd show you the entry, or part of the entry that I entered. I entered into the children's publishing category. It's the first year that I've entered, but I thought I'd show you what I entered, how it ended up, and the journey my illustrations went on to get to that place. So these are the illustrations that I ended up submitting for my entry. I ended up entering last minute, and it had been on my horizon for a little while, but I was still a little bit uncertain about what to enter, how to enter, you know, all those questions of self-doubt that you've got. But in January I joined the AOI. It's not sponsored. In January I joined the AOI. The World Illustration Awards is run by the AOI. AOI members get a discount, and I had an email from them like the night that the early bird discount for AOI members was going to expire. So they do a discount, but also they had like the first few weeks of the competition being open, you get even more of a discount. So they sent me an email and were like, hey, your early bird discount's just about to expire. And the only reason I took it up is because you could pay for your entry and then work on it up until deadline day. So that's the only reason I joined in this year. But I'm so glad that I did, because I've taken a project that I started this year and I've really kind of given it the finesse that it needed. Like I say, I entered into the children's publishing category because that's kind of where a lot of my portfolio work sits. I've either made characters that stand alone without a story but could be fitted into a story, or I've got characters and a story ready to go and ready to approach agents and publishers with. I thought it'd be interesting to show you the journey, because these illustrations, they've taken quite a journey. So when I very first started these ideas, it came from a studio session, just like I did the other day. If you watched the last video that I did, I was using a postcard, an old vintage postcard, to spark off ideas. And I got my big sketchbook out, this one, and I just let the ideas come where they did. So I started drawing from the village postcard to start with, and then ideas generated from there. And I just went big and messy without any idea of how they were going to be, or without any idea that they were going to be neat and tidy. And I did the same with the ideas for this project, which has now turned into a book. I just decided I wanted to draw a cat in my studio, and I got my biggest pad of paper out, which is this one that I've got. It's Dale Rowney A2, not sponsored, but this is the biggest one that I got, and I thought, to stop me being precious, just go big or go home. So I did, and I started playing around, and this is what I ended up with. And I've got pages and pages of this cat in different positions that I just like the look of the eyes, I like the colour combination, and in essence, I've kind of, in the end, kept this kind of messy, chaotic writing. It has refined, so there is a refinement between this and the end process, but this was Sketchbook Play. And I've done pages and pages of ideas, just some ideas, without any idea of how they were going to turn out. Too spiky. But in the journey that I took to get to the end result, I started to tidy the life out of this idea. The more I did these pictures, the big ones, the more I thought, oh, this has got legs, this has got something. Then I started to get precious about it. I started to feel like, oh, if it's got something, then maybe I need to do it properly. Forgetting that there's no proper way to do art, there's just your way, right? So I then transferred it to my iPad, and the more time I spent on these ideas on my iPad, the tighter and less expressive they got, the neater they got. Nothing wrong with neat, it's just when I do neat, the thing that makes the drawing mine is gone. It got neater and tidier, and I'll try and find some pictures and I'll put them up on the screen now of how they ended up in the middle of the process. In fact, up until me buying my entry into the World Illustration Awards this year, they looked like this. And I think you'll be able to agree that the difference between what I've ended up with and what I had just before I ended up with that, they're a world apart. And I really like that I've gone back to the essence of these playful, loose, expressive pieces. The final illustrations I did eventually do on my iPad, but I remembered to loosen up. I just started with fresh eyes. I relaxed my shoulders. I imported those less expressive images, the ones that I had just, these ones, into my iPad, into Procreate, which is the software that I use. You can use any software. I put it on a layer. I turned the opacity all the way down so I could barely see it, and then just loosely, I gave myself a timer and I just worked over it. Rough. Very loosely, I went over it expressively, using the template underneath as a kind of guide, but not sticking to it. And then, because I had this now very rough, in a very rough pen, image over the top, I used that as my new base for my new illustration. So I got rid of the first layer that I made opaque, the tighter, less messy one. And then I used my new, more scribbly, messy, vague scribble that I'd just done as my base. I turned the opacity right down on that layer, opened up a new layer, and then worked looser on top. And that's kind of how I got to where I am now with that entry. I'm not saying that that is the right way or the wrong way. I just thought I'd show you the process that I went through to give you some transparency, to show you that not everything starts out as you want it to. Not everything ends up as you want it to without a journey. So I thought it was very interesting, or a bit interesting, to show you kind of some of the initial work that sparked off that idea, the journey it went into, where I tidied the life out of it and it just lost that little that spark that was me, and then how I found it again. And actually, I think it wasn't just me putting a timer on when I was doing the last final sketches. I think the fact that I had a deadline of the World Illustration Awards, it lit a fire under me, and that also worked as a timer. If you don't know, I love timing my sketches. That was one of the things that opened my eyes to how to use a sketchbook, how to have a good relationship with my sketches, be able to see my messy sketches and not think I was a rubbish artist, which then meant that I could carry on drawing, get loads of practice. I did do a video all about this. It's included in it's like a sketchbook tour then and now. I'll pop the link up here or here, wherever it turns up. If you can't see a link pop up here, it'll be in the video description. So go and check that out. It's quite a long video, but if you're interested in process, if you're interested in seeing my old sketchbooks compared to my new ones and the journey that I went on, again, yours will be different, but it's still important, I think, to be aware that people go on journeys and it's not always a straight trajectory to improvement. There's ups and downs, there's peaks and troughs. And just like in this project as well, it started off quite expressive and I was very pleased with all the work that I got down. And then I thought I was on a trajectory up to improvement, and actually looking back on this journey, that was a little bit of a trough, that was a dip when I started to tidy the life out of it, but then it eventually went up again. So even though I'm not saying that this is a map of progress that you've got to follow, it's just to indicate that progression doesn't always look like this. It sometimes looks like this, and sometimes you'll be down here, and then sometimes you'll do a big peak, and the overall pattern might be upward, but on the journey, some days, some weeks, some months, you might not be improving at all. In fact, you might regress, and that's fine. I think everyone goes on these journeys, and the key to getting through it is just getting through it, keeping going. If you stop when you're down here and you're not making any progress, then you'll always be in that no progress zone. But if you go, well, this is part of the process, everybody goes through this, and this is why I think it's important to share this process with you, my process, even though your process will be different. The more we share truths about how we work and the reality of our working practice and our working day and the state of our project, the more you'll be able to take it, or I'll be able to take it. And when we are in that trough, when we are in that kind of dip in our progress, we go, oh well, Everybody goes through this. How am I going to get out of it? I'm not going to get out of it by stopping. I just got to go through it. Like the I'm Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen. You know, you can't go over it, you can't go under it. You've just got to go through it, and eventually you'll be, the trough will be in the distance. You'll be on the peak to progress, and that's the only real way to get through it. But I think sometimes, especially with social media and all that kind of stuff, you can forget that everybody goes on that peaks and troughs journey, and a lot of the time you're in a trough. Sometimes you don't feel like creating. Sometimes you pick up a pen and magic happens without you even thinking about it. That's kind of what happened with this one, really. I'm not saying the initial sketches are amazing, and in many ways the fact that they're not technically amazing is what made me carry on, because I was just playing. But when I was doing this, I felt like I'd tapped into some artistic magic. Some days I'm trudging through porridge and it doesn't feel enjoyable. So yeah, I thought I'd share that. But I'm going to do something very similar today. In the last video, I kind of developed some sketches. So they came from, I'll put the image up on the screen, this vintage postcard. And this is from a drawing prompt that I'm doing over on Patreon. I'm going to do this every month. People can dip into if they want to. It's not a lesson in how to draw. It's here's a thing. You may want to draw it if you haven't managed to get out sketching, or you don't know what to draw, or you just want an excuse to blob some paints around. So in the last video, I posted that up to you to share my idea of what I'm going to do over on Patreon, and also to show kind of a real-time studio process. So I ended up drawing some badgers. This is kind of realistic, like it's following the pose that's on the postcard. But after this page, the grumpy badger on the left really stole the show for me, and this guy started to become a bit more anthropomorphic. Is that the word? And he's been in my head ever since. And I think there might be more to this character, and I want to tease him out. I'm not going to force it. I'm going to tease him out, like you do when you get a cotter in your hair. You don't have to cut it out, do you? You get a comb and you tease out all of the knots until it's straightened out. And that's what I'm going to do today, in the same process, in the same way as I did with This Is Not My Seat, my entry into the World Illustration Awards. And I'm just going to play and see what happens. I'm going to get my easel out. I think I've got the desk easel I'm going to put up here. I'm going to get the big paper out. So that's my idea. Join me. So I've started out getting a bunch of materials. I've got my easel up on the desk, and I've just chosen materials that I enjoy working with and things that I know I can get messy with, because that, for me anyway, is the key, I think, to starting off these sessions. And the kind of thing that I've got in my mind for this session is to explore that badger character, either by drawing more of the badger. I'll probably start with drawing more of the badger, but like teasing out bits of like, who could that badger be? Where might they live? What does the inside of their house look like? just to spark ideas off. Nothing that's going to be too concrete, nothing that's like this has to be a story or like this has to be a comic or an illustration piece. It's just like playing, getting that muscle memory. It's like we do with our live drawing Zooms, just kind of practicing, putting pen on paper, playing with different materials. No expectation about it looking like anything in particular, but at the same time, just thinking, holding in my head, who is this character? Is there anything that I can find through the magic of art? But I think the key is just not holding it too tightly. If I don't find out anything about this character, then so be it. At least I've had an hour in my studio playing. But first things first, a coffee. Doesn't that look purposeful? I love a desk that's ready. This is just the first page and I just wanted to show you. I didn't have any... I lie. I did have an idea of the kind of thing that I wanted to do with this thing. It hasn't really worked out or gone in... Not worked out. It hasn't gone in the direction I thought it would, but it's something. And this isn't a process that needs to be neat and tidy. This is a process that's explorative, playful, and a little bit messy. And that is what I'm getting from it. I'm not just, I mean, you might want to do this differently. I'm not just doing images. I'm also like words that come to mind. It's like a mind dump of what this guy could be, what he might say, what he might look like, what's he not happy about. I'm going to let my mind unravel as I just put ideas down. These might end up being something, they might end up being nothing. If nothing else, even if this doesn't end up being a project or developed in any kind of way, if nothing else, I've practiced drawing and I've practiced getting ideas onto a page, and I have developed muscle memory, and I've used some materials up so they weren't a waste of money. So lots of positives, even if this doesn't become anything in particular. So that's it, an hour of work, about 55 minutes-ish. And I've got a few pages. Some of them please me better than others, but like I said before, they all serve a purpose. If nothing else, I've got super messy, which it shows that I've been creative. So yeah, I've generated some ideas. Are they going to be finished pages? No, no way. Are they pages of things? No, maybe, I don't know. But they've sparked ideas. Now when the itch of this kind of character or story is starting to kind of niggle away in my brain again, I can bring these out and it might spark other ideas. It might not as well, it might not. But I've got something I can work with, I've got a foundation. I don't need to do these again. I can move on to something else. I might end up putting these away for weeks and never look at them. I might find that these stay in my head and I need to scratch the itch and work out something else about them. But at least I've started that journey and that is worth its weight in gold. I'm now going to go and have some lunch. So this is probably a good place to end this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments the kind of thing that you do when you're trying to generate ideas. I had a few replies to the last video and they really made me feel like I want to get back into my studio. So yeah, let me know what you do. Let me know what you find challenging about like being a creative person, the challenges that you have in your studio. You kind of, if you've got any mind blocks, I still have them, even though I've spent a lot of time working through them. If you do want to see how I've kind of got to where I am now mentally in terms of like being able to judgment-free gain something from my work, I would recommend go and have a look at my sketchbook tour, my sketchbook comparison. I talk about my journey in there, and I don't know, don't be put off by the fact that it's a long video. I do actually think it's probably one of my best videos that I've done, and I think there's quite a lot of nuggets of information in there that you might get something from. So grab a cup of tea, because it is a long one, but don't be put off by that. You might want to just put it on in the background, listen to it as a podcast type thing. That's completely up to you, but keep your eyes peeled because there are visual comparisons between previous sketchbooks and stuff. So anyway, you do you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going to leave this video now. So thanks so much for joining me, and hopefully I will catch you in the next one. So until then, bye. Do, 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 do.